All right.
No, I agree.
Guess what? We've got a top five this week. Top five. We talked a lot about rookies this week, and you've got we talked about how Jaden and Bo Nix and Penix and stuff, and not Penix, Drake and stuff are having good seasons. So top five all time rookie NFL seasons. You want to go first? You want me to go first? Usually you go
I'll,
first.
I was gonna say usually I go first, but most of my guys are I only have one older guy on my list, so I'll let you go first because you probably have some more older guys that you grew up watching. So most of mine are all of mine I have seen play in my lifetime except for one.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Um, so let me look here. Number five on my list is Dan Marino. Now Dan Marino came in 1983. He was in that great draft class. You talk about one of the top NFL quarterback draft classes of all time. Go look up that 1983 draft class. But had one of the best rookie seasons. Dan Marino, who I consider to be probably the best quarterback to never win a Super Bowl, only made it to one, and that was in his second season. Lost to San Francisco, never made it back again. But now he threw 20 touchdowns to only 6 picks, which back then was, I mean, compared to today, obviously that's not that great, but back then that was a stellar season. So Dan Marino's number five for me. Number four is CJ Stroud. Now, what CJ Stroud did last year, obviously, and I've said this before, Ohio State quarterbacks, go look it up. Ohio State quarterbacks coming in the NFL have never done anything. They've all been busts or, on the bench, backups. They've never done well in the playoffs, never won a Super Bowl as a starter. So what CJ Stroud did last year, now getting to the second round of the playoffs, rookie of the year, to me, I just have to put him right there. Number three, one of the most electric players I've ever seen play, and just went into the Hall of Fame, and that's Devin Hester. His 2006 season, he had an NFL record 5 return touchdowns. He had 600 yard, led all punt returners to 600 yards and three touchdowns, and helped take that Chicago team that was not that good very far. Number two, and you'll like this one. 1983. Talk about the 1983 draft class. From the Los Angeles Rams of Anaheim. That's where they played. Eric Dickerson. He had 2,212 yards. 2,212 yards from scrimmage as a rookie and 20 touchdowns. You talk about somebody, he averaged 113 yards a game. I mean, to me, that you can't compare that. But my number one, 1999, West Virginia boy, who I think is the greatest receiver of all time, Randy Moss. And, he went with the 17th pick. And he was so upset because he thought he was going to the Cowboys. And the Cowboys actually told him before the draft that they were taking him if he was there. And they passed on him. And he went to Minnesota. Randall Cunningham was the quarterback. They should have went to the Super Bowl that year. They lost on a last-second field goal miss in the AFC Championship game to the Dirty Bird Atlanta Falcons, who went on to get just roasted by the Denver Broncos that year in the Super Bowl, and that would have been a great game. Go look up the highlights from the Thanksgiving game against the Cowboys. He caught 3 passes for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, just talk about breaking onto the scene and being dominant. To me, I know Jerry Rice is considered the greatest wide receiver of all time, statistically and everything else, but to me, Randy Moss is my favorite wide receiver of all time.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew.
So I actually was looking at brought my list up just because I have it in notes. I actually have 2 players that I never saw play, so that's my fault. But I'll start with my honorable mentions. My honorable mention is Dan Marino. He's just off my list at number 6. I agree he is the best quarterback who's ever best quarterback, potentially the best player to never win a Super Bowl. Number 5 on my list is, in my opinion, the man who started, not started, but redefined what it is to be a dynamic, multi-threat quarterback, and that's Cam Newton. He had the Heisman coming out of Auburn. He won Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he threw. I think he threw for. I have it in my notes. Yeah, so he threw for more than 400 yards in his first 2 games. He finished with more than 4,000 passing yards and more than 20 touchdowns. He had a quarterback record at the time, 14 rushing touchdowns. So dual threat, redefined what it is. I think Michael Vick was like the predecessor, but Cam Newton was really the trendsetter.
Yeah, Cam was like a linebacker playing quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Number 4 is somebody on your list as well, and that's Eric Dickerson for the same reasons. I mean, just dominant from the first snap he played, just dominant. Over 2,000 rushing yards, like you said. I think it was like over 2,600 scrimmage yards in total. And like 20-ish touchdowns. And he's in LA. Well, a Rams player, so
they were in LA in '83.
Yeah, so LA. Okay.
They just played in Anaheim.
Yeah. You're right. Number 3 is another dual threat quarterback. I think the best dual threat quarterback. His rookie year, he was the best dual threat quarterback until Lamar, and that's RG3. I think if he would have learned how to slide, if he would have the Nationals literally told him, come to our camp, we will teach you how to slide properly. That was his biggest downside. Let me bring up my notes. He led the league. He led the league in both yards per attempt as a passer and yards per attempt as a rusher in the same season, in his rookie season. Just absolute stud. I mean, he was great. But the season, or the not career-ending knee injury, because he did go on to play for Baltimore. But
career-altering.
Yes, that's a good career-altering injury. I think if he didn't get that, if he would have learned how to slide, I think he would have been. He would have gone on to be one of the best dual threat quarterbacks of all time. Number 2 is your number 1, and I completely agree with you. He is my favorite wide receiver as well, and that's Randy Moss. For the exact, like I said, same reasons. I think him and Randall Cunningham were one of the most dangerous quarterback wide receiver combinations in the NFL at the time. over 1,000 yards over 1,000 yards receiving, 18 touchdowns his rookie year, something like that. Just elite, and I agree. He is definitely the best wide receiver to never win a Super Bowl. I think personally, I think he's better than Jerry Rice, in my opinion. I think he's the best wide receiver to ever play the game. Number one, I'm pretty sure the only player on both of our lists that was a defensive player, Lawrence Taylor. The only player in all of NFL history to win both Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. He had 9.5 sacks his rookie year. The Giants won. They ended up winning more, like significant. I think it was like 5 or 6 more games the year that they drafted him than the year before, and he would go on to be the best defensive player to ever play in the game.
Yeah, to me, in my opinion, he's the best defensive player I've ever seen play, and he turned around that Giants franchise.
Exactly, and I think that's a pick. That's one of those picks where it's like one pick changed a team significantly, and it was a pick. He changed that team so significantly from a role or from a position that is significantly harder to do than a quarterback. You know what I mean?
He played multiple positions.
But
he played because you could put him on the end, you could put him at outside linebacker, you could put him in the middle if you needed to. Like he was such a dynamic threat.
Yeah, I agree. But what I'm saying is like a quarterback, one pick can change a team. We've said that multiple times this week or this podcast. But most of the time, that one pick is a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, all these quarterbacks that helped their team become what they are today. Lawrence Taylor is not a quarterback. He is a defensive player. Defensive players do not shine as brightly as offensive players. Now, I know back then they did more. Defense was more impactful than it is today. But I think he, not only is he the best defensive player to ever play, I think he's got the best, in my opinion, the best rookie season.
Yeah, and I will tell you this, he changed offenses.
Yeah.
Like Joe Gibbs had to put 2 tight ends, come up with these 2 tight end packages on one side in order to be able to chip Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
So, he changed the way that offenses had to adjust and play in order to be able to, keep up with him. So, yeah, I agree. He's, to me, he's the best defensive player of all time.
Yeah, but I also think he won Defensive Player of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year in the same, his first year, and he had nearly 10 sacks. So,
yep.
He put the fear of God in quarterbacks from the day he